Guess who's lucky enough to buy a game that appears in PlayStation Plus a few days later?
Look at this dude. No, 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 no. Look at the top of his head.
This is what an average Battlefield 2042 gameplay looks like. I believe that footage perfectly represents the quality of the game. I heard a lot of shit about that game, about how poor it was at the release and that the developers had to make a ton of changes to make it playable. Personally, I didn't have a chance to try out this game earlier. That's why this video is an experience of an average player trying Battlefield 2042 for the first time after a year of the release. Feelings, emotions, analysis, and a slight piece of comparison with other games of the series. And yeah, as you most probably have guessed, I'm playing the PS4 FAT version. God bless me.
Look at his lips.
So since I'm playing the PS4 FAT version of the game, I believe there is no point in doing the visual assessment of the game. However, I need to mention that the game looks worse than Battlefield 5 on the very same console. But wait, let's get to the comparisons with previous game of the series a bit later. The general texture quality is low and it takes time for them to load. For example, it's common to see a situation when you're running across the battlefield and some object is getting loaded just in front of you, which, looks awkward. Another common thing to see is the absence of a gun in front of you if you spawn just at the beginning of the round. Why would anyone ask? It's that simple. Its textures just haven't loaded yet. And the game is full of such things, which, makes not the best impression. But again, I don't think I need to emphasize too much on that, since that a PS4 FAT version of the game, and it was obviously significantly downgraded to fit the PS4 capabilities. That's why it's good to have it here. The similar situation happened to Battlefield 4, which was released on Xbox 360 and PS3, and it looked terrible. But believe me, the bad graphics on PS4 is not the reason why this game is bad. It has a ton of other different reasons to be considered one of the worst games of the series. To start with, it's very hard to call it a Battlefield. The game just completely loses on the emotions and the atmosphere of the military combat with two armies fighting each other. While in reality it looks like a bunch of folks running around with plastic guns and making funny sounds. Just compare what it used to be.
Seid wachsam! Seht ihr das? Bin für dich da.
And what is now?
I need to reload! Marking Tango! 70 meters up from me!
But don't get me wrong, the tap matches with advantage going from one side to another, after which the only thing you can say is the "wow, that was a cool fight" still exists, but it is nowhere close what it used to be in the previous games of the series, for example in Battlefield 5. Speaking about the Battlefield 5, just compare the gun feeling in the BF5 . And now in Battlefield 2042. Do I really need to comment how unrealistic and artificial this is? And Battlefield has never been a combat action simulator, but what it did perfectly well is the conveying of feeling being in the middle of the combat actions. And I probably know why that happens. Year after year, Electronic Arts look up at the Call of Duty sellings and they obviously would like to have the same. But the idea of making Battlefield a Call of Duty-like game is wrong, as the game loses identity and the reason why players love this series. And there is nothing bad in copying others' successful ideas or getting inspired by them, but you have to do it in a smart way such that these ideas go well with the original concept. Instead of a class system that the Battlefield had, the developers decided to add a system of heroes with their unique abilities, but they didn't count that it completely kills the core gameplay mechanics. In the past, each single class had its own set of guns and set of equipment that it can use. And the problem with Battlefield 2042 is that each single specialist has access to all the available guns. Obviously that caused a ton of criticism since players could pick the most powerful specialist without thinking too much of a gun, as all of them are available to them. As you may guess, this killed weak specialists with literally unusable abilities, and yeah, nobody used them. Battlefield is not a team game and nobody cares about using team abilities, for example a team beacon. That system exacerbated the situation even more since nobody even cared to play for such useless specialists. Everyone was complaining so much that the developers had to reintroduce the class system again. And now it's a sort of combination between the class system the previous Battlefields had and the specialist system. Personally, I believe this is better than that they had before. I didn't have a chance to try that. But from my experience, players still use only a few specialists with the most powerful abilities, as again, all the guns are available to all the specialists. Even though I'm not a huge fan of vehicles, from time to time I can play on a tank or any other machinery. In general, I can say that the vehicles are fine here. I really appreciate that the vehicles do not dominate everything around as it used to be in PF3 or PF4. However, in a skillful hands, vehicles still pose a significant threat to all the other players on the battlefield. But the problem with the vehicles, as with all the other parts of the game, you just don't feel that they are real. They are so plastic and artificial that you don't feel the power and strength of the huge massive machine rolling across the battlefield. Instead of it, you feel like you are driving a toy-like car that can shoot from time to time. I remember driving a tank in all the previous battlefields and it felt like you are controlling a heavy, strong machine, killing everything under its tracks. And the shooting sound, oh god, it was amazing. But unfortunately the Battlefield 2042 tanks do not feel like that at all. I'm not flying, that's why I cannot say much about the flying vehicles. But for the time I spent in the game, from a perspective of an infantry player, I could say there is no such domination as it used to be in Battlefield 3 and 4. So a squad of 2 players cannot control the entire battlefield using a helicopter and a TV rocket. So that's definitely a plus for me. Judging from the release reviews, the map design of the game was awful. Most people complained about a huge size of maps and that it takes an eternity to get from one point to another, so that the dynamics is really low. Personally, I believe this issue has been present in many battlefields from the early ages, but in this very game it came to another level. Not only the maps are huge and it takes a lot of time just to find an enemy, but their structure, damn, it's very bad. A classic Battlefield 2042 Conquest map is a giant field with several buildings or containers here and there, and usually these buildings or containers are the points that the players have to capture. So a usual gameplay is just to run with a bunch of players to the point, have a fight, and run to another, and then to another, and again, and again. and between that point, nothing happens. And there's a huge problem with the maps in Battlefield 2042. To be fair, not all of the maps are that bad. There are some of them that is pretty good to play. I can highlight Exposure and Stranded. The cool thing about Exposure is that the vertical gameplay with ziplines and hooks really works here. The map consists of several layers and the players can move from one layer to another, and in general the map is pretty dynamic with hard points here and there. On all the other maps the vertical gameplay simply does not work, as the only things that the players have is the ground and a huge building that the players can climb on to snipe the ground players. The Stranded map is just a good example of a well-designed infantry map, and as I understood, this map is a single map in the whole Battlefield 2042 which has no vehicles in it. That's a map for a pure infantry gameplay. In terms of the breakthrough mode, the situation is better, as the game mode just encourages players to clash with one another, and it's pretty funny to play. However, on the other side of the coin, due to a very poor map structure, the games in the breakthrough mode simply turn into a shooting range with players from both teams shooting one another. You respawn, you run a few meters, and then you die due to some explosion or somebody's bullet, and again, and there is no way to flank an enemy team, as the map design is not made in a way to encourage the tactical moves. Instead, it's a huge open space with several objects that the players can hide behind and then die after 1 second they pick out from it. So to sum up, the maps in the game are a huge blunder, and they are one of the key reasons why the game failed. I wish I could tell you something about the Portal mode that I really wanted to play. However, it appears that there is no possibility to play the Portal mode whenever you want it. Personally, I thought that I can play the classic Battlefield modes like Grand Conquest or Breakthrough just in the previous Battlefield eras. And as I understood at the release, it was like that, such that you could select the specific era that you would like to play. But now the Portal mode works like a sort of event, such that you're given a specific mode that you can play, and it changes from time to time, and that's the developers who select that. For example, let's say you would like to play a classic Battlefield 3 Conquest, and you simply can't do that, as DICE do not host such servers, so you cannot find a game like that. So what you can do is either wait till this mode would appear in the list of the available ones, or search among the servers that the players host. But the problem is that these servers are the custom ones, and they have a lot of settings applied to them. So these are not actually the classic Battlefield that I wanted to play. And this is pity, because one of the main reasons why I bought that game was the possibility to play the old Battlefields. Nevertheless, I was able to play the Battlefield 3 era several times, and it wasn't bad. I would say it was even nice. One of the coolest things is maps, which are still good and very entertaining to play, due to a good design that DICE used to have. In general, the old maps are one of not many good things in the game, and they are really fresh to play, even for the Battlefield 2042 era. What also makes the BF3 era nice to play is the well-designed class system with all the old guns present, and in general it's pretty cool and nice to play that mode. I liked it, even for a short period of time, but I enjoyed playing it. But you must understand, despite all the feelings and sounds of the game, this is not a pure BF3. Instead, it mostly feels like a reskin of Battlefield 2042 adapted to BF3, or rather like a mode for 2042. I would lie if I say that I didn't have a single moment that I enjoyed that game. No, that's not true, but mostly I felt irritation playing it, as the Battlefield for me is definitely something different than this game. The game is full of gameplay decisions that I don't really understand, especially considering a tremendous experience of the developers with the previous games of the series. As for the irritating moments, I mean such subtle things that completely ruin the experience. For example, why would you throw a grenade into button clicks when you can do that with one click, as it has been done in the most FPS games? Who got the idea to assign the grenade launcher button but with a long hold to the one that is used for switching the fire mode? Why is the full map blocking the view if you would like to see it? The previous games had it nicely done, but why is that like that now? Or why can't I switch a squad that simple as it used to be? Now I have to go through each player by player to see if I can join their squad. And I can go further with a list of such things that simply prevents from normal playing. And the most bizarre thing for me is that in the previous games of the series, all these things were nicely implemented. How did you get them screwed up? So, answering the main question of the video, what would a new player feel playing Battlefield 2042 today, is disappointment. A completely new player would logically ask if this game is from the prominent Battlefield series that everyone look up and which is considered to be one of the greatest FPS gaming series. Experienced players like me who played the previous Battlefield games would question how could you fall that low and make anything but not a Battlefield game. And I assume in a technical matter the game is much better than it was at the release. However, the reason why the game sucks is not the technical quality, it is the core mechanics and the gameplay that were initially made wrong. Generally, this is an okay game, but this is not what I want from Battlefield. I would like to have new, fresh, thrilling emotions that capture me for many hours. But this game is one of the weakest in the series, and I have absolutely no desire to play. I really have significant concerns about the Battlefield series future, as blind copying is not what would make the Battlefield games great again.